Today we're going back to World War I, to some of the most advanced trench systems I have ever seen, did not even think possible from that time. And I'll tell you about how the medical services work and visit the hospital bunkers. But first, I want to share with you a story of a fort. The Germans had first taken the large Fort Vaux, the pride of France, and without a single shot fired as well. Hereafter they attempted to take Fort Vaux, the flanking fort, also on the right bank of the Meuse. The village of Vaux had changed hands in the fighting 13 times in 1 month alone. The fort of Vaux was smaller, and the Germans did not expect that much fighting had to be done for it. But they soon realized that despite their incredibly heavy bombardment of the fort, they had a real fight on their hands. The French crews had mostly survived in the undergrounds, even after the Germans bombarded the fort with 12 420mm guns, which caused little damage inside. However, before the Germans ever got to this fort, the French army had begun to evacuate all the heavy weapons out of their fortresses after seeing the fate of the Belgium fort under German bombardment. Still, the French army had occupied the fields between the forts, and at the end of 1915, guns, ammunition, the 75mm guns were all removed from the casemates. Only enough gunpowder had been left behind to actually destroy the fort. It was these charges that detonated under the turret when the heavy shell penetrated in February 1916. So literally, when the new commander, Renault, took over the fort, it had no artillery. And then the Germans were attacking. German flamethrower attacks initially forced the French soldiers to retreat from the fields into the fort itself. Renault requested the French army to bomb his own fort, as the Germans were running around on top of it.
That's quite small, isn't it?
Ammunition shelter.
Yep.
Built by the Germans? French.
Part of the fortified
French
system.
Yes, because the fortress is right up here, above us somewhere.
No, it's down the road.
Down the road.
Yeah. But there's no, they had gun batteries all around. In fact, is that a gun battery there? Yeah, they got gun positions here, I think.
Yeah, this is late 1800s, isn't it? From the stuff from the masonry.
Yeah, when they were building the fortified system, making Verdun a place fort, as they call it, a strong point.
Yeah, that's a gun.
Stronghold. Those are gun.
Yeah, they're gun positions. Yeah.
120s or 155.
It's just interesting that they have a permanent ammunition storage and a earth ducked out shelter for the cannons. If you're going to go to the trouble to build a shelter or a bunker for your ammo, you could have done something a little bit more for your guns.
Yes, but when your gun emplacement in stone is, there's a big shell over there. That's not a gun emplacement. When it's hit by a shell, your gunners get showered in stone fragments, don't they?
Well, if it's not covered and it gets hit by a shell, they just die.
Just blown to pieces, yeah, that's true.
It's not like there's not really a win-win here.
Right. Yeah, I give in. You're right. Right, here we are at the Fort Vaux. It's a very small intermediate fortress between the big forts like Douaumont and the others in the big ring around Verdun. Later on, this would have been built as a small ouvrage, but it has a ditch all around it, so technically it's a fort. It was given a 75 twin-gun turret to command the area all around the fort, and it was also given 2 casemates de Bourges, one at either side, to fire towards the major forts to protect the intervals between them. Okay. Now, it was built in the 1880s at the same time as Douaumont and the rest of the ring of forts around Verdun, the standard forts, and later it was reinforced with concrete and given a turret. It didn't have a turret at the start, obviously. Okay. Now, the tragedy of the fort is that, like the rest of the fortified ring, the French were preparing to abandon it just at the moment that the Germans attacked. The Germans didn't know that. they'd have waited until the French had blown up the forts, as they planned to do, and then they would have attacked. But no, they attacked just before the French demolished the forts. But unfortunately for the Fort Vaux here, the 75 turret had dynamite placed in the well. And a large German shell hit the armoured screen around it, the apron, around the top of the turret, and the shock set off the dynamite, which blew the whole turret up in the air, and it landed down beside its original position as a complete wreck. So, added to the fact that the French had taken the 75 field guns out of the casemates, the fort was virtually disarmed. Now, the Germans captured Douaumont, and then several months later, they advanced to capture Vaux. And the French had managed to put a few machine guns in the embrasures around the fort to try to defend it. It was still pretty defensible at the time. But unfortunately, one of the machine guns they used was a Saint-Étienne, a model renowned for jamming. And so the Germans were trying to get into the ditch, trying to get into the embrasures, and the French machine gunners were firing continually to keep them at bay. And then suddenly the gun went silent, and the Germans up above the embrasure heard click, 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 armed. And they threw explosives in and killed the machine gunners and got into the embrasures, which led them to the tunnels leading inside the fort. And the French inside, the garrison had been swollen by fugitives who'd run in from the bombarded trenches all around. There were too many men inside for the food, the munitions, the bandages, the first aid equipment, but basically there were too many men for the water supplies because the bombardments the Germans had been carrying out had cracked the water tanks, and a lot of the water had leaked out. So they fought in the underground tunnels for a day and a half. They fought against the Germans armed with machine guns and flamethrowers, chucking grenades. The French set up their machine guns, sandbags, etc. in the underground tunnels and fought the Germans off and kept them. The Germans kept advancing ever so slowly, but the French kept the main central part of the fort. Until the moment when they'd not only run out of food, they were running out of ammunition, they'd run out of bandages, but they ran out of water. And you can go for a day after you've run out of water by drinking your own urine, like they do on lifeboats from sunken ships. After that, you're in desperate straits. So Commandant Reynal, an old guy who was wounded previously, who'd been brought in to just keep the fort going, if you like. He realized that his men had fought so bravely, he was not prepared to let them die for nothing. And so he got his last pigeon, which was called Vaillant. He wrote an urgent message to Verdun. We're surrounded, we're running out of everything. I'm not going to let my men die for nothing. If you can't break through and relieve the fort, then we're going to be obliged to surrender. Oh, by the way, this is my last pigeon. Of course, Vaillant avoids all the Germans shooting at him. He avoids the German hawks, which are stationed around the fort, simply, obviously, to catch messenger pigeons. He flies 125 kilometers an hour. He zigzags through the shell bursts, and he makes it to Verdun. I say he because we know now that Vaillant was a girl, Vaillante, and she survived, and she had chicks afterwards. But the legend is that poor Vaillant, he dies after delivering his message. You know, it's a nice legend. But the French can't break through. And so Commandant Reynal surrenders the fort. And the Crown Prince comes here, and when Reynal hands him over his sword, the Crown Prince gives it back to Reynal. And his men are given full military honours as they leave the fort, virtually dying of thirst, poor guys. Now, of course, the French then bombard the fort from the rear. That's why this part of it, and the whole ditch on this side of the fort has been destroyed. The concrete has been blasted away, until finally they recapture it.
So that was for close defense. This is a firing embrasure.
I think that was cobbled on afterwards.
You think?
See there again, the bedrooms, look. See the bedrooms, the arches?
I mean, it could have been original, because I've seen late 1800 forts where there was a little bunker like this attachment that would fire in both directions, because here would...
Oh, yeah, I know.
Yeah, you know.
The ditch, yes.
Yeah.
A caponnier. That's what it's called technically. Yeah.
And this,
This fort had a caponnier originally. Well, Dortmund had a caponnier. They stuck out in the apex
yeah.
to find on both directions. But they realized very quickly after testing the fort that they blew to bits that a caponnier out in the open in the middle of the ditch was so vulnerable that they took those away and they buried the embrasures inside the walls of the ditch in the corners to avoid a bit of standing out as targets.
Probably not a bad idea. So all this damage is done by French firing
French
at the back of their own fort.
Yep, because this would have been a carapace,
Yeah.
as they say, of a turtle shell of special concrete. Went back to the days of the Romans.
Did they at least restore this somewhat correctly?
No, it basically do it.
Foiled by bats once again.
And she's beautiful. Made of bronze. And you imagine they're going up against breech-loading steel cannons made by Kraft. I don't know, it's an octagonal.
It is actually somewhat rifled.
Like the, Oh, no, it's for studded shells.
Well, that's what that is.
Yeah.
But that's still considered rifling, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right, for studded shells, yeah. Like the exploding chocolate shells you can buy from the Dragé factory. They reproduce the shells that would have gone in here. Now, for the short range work in the ditch of a fort, they cut out the breech and they made it a breech loader.
So this was originally a muzzle loader and then turned into a breech loader later on.
Yeah.
Because when it was a muzzle loader in the Franco-Prussian Wars, this is sort of what got the French army in trouble.
In big trouble because they were outranged by the steel guns. Yeah, so that's a little beauty. And they did this for all the forts. It was converted, look, in 1887.
So this is the conversion date, not the construction date.
No, 1887 they converted it. Because all she needs to do, is to fire shrapnel down the length of the ditch. She doesn't have to go 5 or 6 kilometers.
This was a trench gun. This was literally a trench sweeper.
In the ditch, a ditch sweeper, yeah. Because it worked very well. Like I told you in Fort Nelson, the ditches that the caponnier, you've got the gun ports along the firing along the ditch, and they had guns twice as big as this, ex-naval smoothbores that they turned into smoothbore breech loaders.
So you check that they blocked the hole.
You turn that in, and you push the whole cylinder in, and then you lock it. So you unlock the cylinder, you pull it back, and then you can swivel it outwards. Because the well-in breech, it's a single action. It shuts and turns at the same moment. But
Was that originally a Swedish system? Or is that the same
that's
system as on
That is de Bonge, it's a French system.
Okay, so it's not the same as on the HMS Warrior. That's the Swedish system. That was a new system then.
Yes. I'm putting the breech in the plug, yeah. No, but this, she was at the Invalides in Paris, rusting.
And you have another little 75 sitting here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's short of that's a Turk, yeah. And that's the recoil mechanism.
Yeah, but is it off that? I don't think it is. Electric generator.
What do you
From the Crown Prince's headquarters.
Oh, so that's German.
Yeah.
That's German World War One.
Yes, it is, isn't it? Well, you see, the French were pretty far ahead on technology before the First World War. The Germans also, but in different things. And that's the tragedy of it. But if they not fought World War I, Europe would have been a much richer place. Who built the first aircraft with a jet engine? And they're the Battle of Below. See, this one just coming out. It's the back den of Batman.
There you go, buddy.
Very similar fort, but a bit smaller.
Yeah.
And look, here, the famous red line. There is a red line painted on the wall here in this corridor. What that means to the garrison, the troops inside, is that when they're under shell fire, they can take shelter here because the red line means this is à l'épreuve in French. It is proof against the heaviest shells that are likely to be brought against the fort. so they can hide in this corridor and then be in safety. Okay.
And that's pretty much a standard thing for French forts.
And you see it in Pigion as well.
And the barracks are much the same.
Yes. There's a picture with wooden beds, but I don't know where they got that from. They said that's a picture of the fort in 1916, but they had all standard beds. So where does a wooden bed come from? I don't know. Because they all had these this is the Serre de Rivière standard bed.
The problem with this whole, we have with history is you don't know where the hell half the photos come from.
If there was an FSA in 1917, you know it was definitely wasn't inside the fort.
Yeah.
The French were about to issue self-loaders before the First World War, you know that, don't you?
Self-loaders, as in
Rifles. Again, a lot of water comes in because the fort was so heavily bombarded.
What was
So
that?
that may have been it may have been a shaft down to the underneath, to the lower floor. They've never gone back to the original French architectural drawings to explain these places.
Really?
Trust me, man. That's all you have to do. You have to go to Vincennes and search through the archives till you find the original plans of the fort. Now these look like later beds. This is the kind of bed going right up to the ceiling that you would find in the ouvrage that we were to right there. And I told you when a 42 centimeter shed hit the roof, that the roof was bowed down and these steel frames were bent and buckled. Now, see, they don't mention this. When they reinforced the roof with a big slab of concrete, they put these arches in. They had
Yeah.
to strengthen the... Not as much as the wooden embrasures at the back of the Fort de Vaux, I think those are disgusting. I cannot believe how they left those there in place. You have to rip all that off and start again. Yes. No, that is not a grave. Everybody thinks it is.
Well, this sort of looks, what is it?
It's just, I don't know, a memorial to the people who died here, I suppose. Not a grave. Not a quick line for covering bodies, but they don't use that in here. You wouldn't do that, not inside. Here he is, Here's Reynal. He was severely wounded, and they gave him a stick, and they said, "You've got a fort now." And he had to hobble through the trench lines to get here, you know, with shells bursting all around him. And when he got here, he said, "Right, now we man the turret." And they said, "There is no turret." They said, "Well, okay, I need gunners for the 75s in the Casemate Bulge." And they said, "There are no turrets, no guns in the Casemate Bulge." Imagine, he's risked right to get to, and the place is half demolished and completely disarmed. What a shock for you. Now, they did not expect as many casualties. Look how many places they had in the first aid post. How many beds they got? 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 beds. Hundreds of men found their way in here, many of them wounded already. And they came to shelter inside the fort. You can see that the arches have been added later. Why? Because they made of brick and not of stone. What a giveaway.
What's in there? In the sense as what was in there?
It's written in German.
It is.
A stellar. I have no idea.
It's a...
Right, the commander's bedroom.
He had his own bed, poor guy.
Yes. Imagine being shut in here when you're in the bombardment. But it's better to be in here, the bombardment, I suppose.
Well, I don't see any red lines on the walls.
This goes down to the shaft. You go down and you turn right, and then down a big shaft like a door to connect with an escape tunnel. Strange.
So telephones.
Yep.
I thought they had sworn off telephones.
Well,
Was that World War II?
They in my manual of 1880, my French Army manual, they talk about using telephones. So they had it already at the time. Got it. In Maginot, the telephone lines were underground in armoured conduits, and outside each ouvrage, did you know, there was a junction box where the local infantry or tank commander could tap into the ouvrage's telephone network and say, we're under fire, help. So it is here. It's just been plastered over as a red first post. Yeah. Oh, now here is where the red line fails us. As you can see. The red line says you're protected. So you're shelling in the tunnel, follow the red line, and then suddenly, kaboom!
It didn't go well.
That did not go well. That is, I don't know whether this is a German 42 or a French 400, but you can imagine that that has spalled off the inside. There was a lot of concrete lying here.
Yeah.
On top of the poor guys who were here. So the red line, it didn't protect them.
That's what they did at Fort de Pointis. They specifically built it with 210 millimeter cannons to withstand 210 millimeter cannons.
Oh right.
And
they were 42 centimeters.
Yes, the Germans thought that was really annoying, so they brought up something like 400 millimeters and blew the fucking thing up. It's like, well, it's like how annoying of you! You're in the way.
I love what you got here. You recognise what that is. Yeah. It's a chicane.
And they literally, it's actually cracked the whole way.
Yes, it has. So we should need hard hats to be walking.
Don't give them any ideas. We're restricted enough here. So they threw these up. They were not there when the fighting started. So the cable was a cable.
That was solid concrete, béton spécial, with volcanic ash in it. That's made by them. Now this would lead under the ditch to an embrasure in the corner, which of course has disappeared. There's no ditch back there. So.
And they put the ditch down, this collapsed.
Oh yeah, well the whole ditch has disappeared. And they built this when the fort was made. This goes down and underneath the ditch and pops up again. When they were fighting in the tunnels, they used sandbags and anything they could.
Anything they had.
Oh yeah, anything they had inside to block up. Here again the remains of the little folding tables where they had their lunch.
Grenade shoot, machine gun shoot.
And
that was machine gun too.
Right on the top, yeah.
And this doesn't have an embrasure. This is just blocking. Really seeing the crack in the ceilings.
Yes, it's impressive, isn't it? The crack in the world. I would not have liked to be in here when that happened. That's a French done that, I think. When the Germans were in it. And here again, where I'm standing, there's another big chunk fallen out. And I would assume this was by French artillery, perhaps a 400mm 1-ton shell, which has fallen on the roof and blown the concrete off the inside. It's very much like an anti-tank round that hits armour on a tank and spalls the metal off inside to disable the crew. But it certainly would not have been pleasant to have been here when this happened. And look, this one has got, look, bétonné, it says, concreted.
Yes, when you come in here, you see how half the walls are missing with the red line. It's very comforting. I mean, you only know to defend against what you sort of think the enemy have. And then when they cook up something that's twice that size.
And look, over there, that's the standard way of blocking a doorway. You've got two channels, channel on either side, and you slot in a bar of metal. You put it in and you drop it down, you put another one and you drop it down, you put another one and drop it down, until you've built a solid barrier And then you've got to block something across the top, which they've done with, I mean, that's later.
Or you would have two, and you would have sand in between, sort of like at Fortress Verdun that had.
Oh no, yeah, that's a standard French version. You find that in several other fortresses, with the two channels, one on the side. This then would have been, look, this is a sortie port, look, to go and man the ramparts.
Oh yes. And you get a little close defense for keeping an eye on guys coming in and out. Grenade port,
shoot,
machine gun, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
but this is all 1917, 1918 they put this up. And they're using bigger stones, look, can you see?
yeah.
Do a hurried job, a quick repair job, in case the Germans came back.
Kurt Rakow was the first German with his flamethrower to enter the tunnels, leading his platoon to the coffers of the counterscarps.
This is where they fought. There's a tunnel ahead of us where the Germans were coming in with flamethrowers. How long do you fire a flamethrower before you use up all the oxygen in a tunnel? Not long.
No.
Again, the chicane has been put in later. The toilets.
Well, that's something that's worth fighting for.
Yep. Definitely. And I came up there. I'll crank it down because it's pretty annoying. They have let reenactors in here and filmed them coming running up. This is the original gate.
There's originally a gate, yeah.
Yeah, to stop people getting in. And you can fire through it as well.
And from the side they have been. There's impact, plenty of impact from the inside of the munitions
on the
here.
wall as well.
Yeah.
Behind you here, there's ball impacts there. That's a nice bullet chip impact.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, this is a hell of a place to fight. This would have been
a day and a half.
noisy
with oil lamps and candles. Can you imagine?
But again, it's like, where do you hide from a flamethrower, even if you're standing behind a wall? In these tight quarters, flames would just whip around everything, wouldn't they?
Yeah, well, you chuck a grenade at the guy holding it, don't you?
I mean, if you stick him, he wouldn't expose himself, he would just stick the nozzle around the corner, I would think.
Well, the French had two types of grenade, offensive and defensive. I think you can class it. Nobody's explained it to me, but it's kind of like the SAS shock grenade, isn't it? The stun grenade, you throw that and it makes a flash bang. It disorientates people.
I mean, you'd have
attacking you.
You would have to stick your hand out and throw it at the guy that's got the flamethrower going at you.
Yeah.
Because you still have to chuck it down the hallway. You can't just roll it to the chute.
No.
So what a messy mess that was.
Those in the round ball shaped ones, not the German stick grenades.
Yeah, my own shadow. I mean, so I'm confused. So this is a defensive position firing that way. That was not built in the middle of the fighting. That must have been a pre-built.
I suspect that that's a lantern window.
Oh, this was the munition storage.
Yeah.
Well, that one makes more sense, actually. Yes, because this was the ammunition elevator, wouldn't it? It would have been here, maybe.
Yeah, you need to take the shot up to the roof.
Yeah. Which is recently. This is not an original poster. That would make this ammunition storage, maybe. Yeah.
But as I said, we'd have to go back to the archives and get the original plans. It's a shame, it is on there. But those two slots underneath are stressed. Yeah, those are ammunition stores, I think. Yeah, definitely.
Oh, that's great. So you're fighting on top of ammunition storage with people firing flamethrowers at you. That's really comforting.
Yes. And you keep it up for a day and a half. I don't know how they did that.
Come here, have a look at this. I mean, I know that, well, okay. That's not 1916, no, that's not 1916. 18316, that must be new. Right?
18th of March 16, that could be original.
It could be original. Yeah. I mean, you would think if that's original, somebody would put a plaque over that thing.
Well, look what they've done with the rest of the fort, come on. You could make this so, you could have little notices, little pictures, little episodes of the guys who were here, couldn't you? Their writings. And they just left it. I don't get it. But then I'm a perfectionist, and I don't know what I would do if it was my fault. And it isn't.
Well, I would attempt to make it safer and have people visit it. And then I would probably rather put things in displays in rooms than pictures.
Yes. And have a guy in uniform on a Saturday.
Yeah, but you would do that regardless of the fort. You just put on the uniform for the sake of it. You're not doing that for the museum. You're doing that because you want to go with a uniform. So it's like, I don't know, what do you think I dress up like a German every weekend? Is that an original, is that a fix from the whole, or?
God knows. And the brick comes in the side as well.
I know, I don't really know what that is.
No, I think this is patching up after the French got back in. Because there's no red lines marked on the wall or anything. Anything that has got a red line on it is a repair. Big enough to know. Oh yes.
Oh, it is.
You think that's bad enough, then you turn the corner and it's catastrophic. It's the, what is it? It's heat that does that, isn't it? You fire a heat round at the tank, or a mesh, the explosive in a mesh bag, and it flattens against the armour.
Yeah, and then the cone, I mean, I don't think this is just percussion. Okay, yeah. This is just shockwave, yeah. It's kind of what I'm sort of thinking. I mean, these are very nice and large, and they're very large and comfortable places. As opposed to some of the smaller bunkers you see.
Oh yes.
Some of the later war fighting fortifications. This is not an uncomfortable place, and presumably it would have been less wet back then.
Yes.
Maybe before everybody blew cracks in it, so the water could get in.
Well, there are folks that are not in bombarded, and 100 years later they're all waterproof.
Yeah.
Yeah, not pleasant at all.
So there is a lot of underground basements here, tunnels, that we can't get into.
Underground level for the magazines, like we saw in Beaumont, but much smaller. Yeah, that's the stairs down to the underground.
And the ventilations, bits and pieces.
Initially, the Germans used the fort after taking it as shelter and command post for the sector. However, the French constantly bombarded it and tried to recapture it, with appalling losses and no successes. Eventually, however, for the Germans, this made life inside the fort impossible, and they completely abandoned it in October.
They then became my best mates.
Big cannibals, that's where it all went wrong.
It's not a very big water tank either, is it? It's a cracked cement water tank.
Instead of a large metal one.
In the
Mounted on rubber
or below ground.
Yeah.
But I mean, of course, okay, I get it. You don't want to put a water tank on the ground where you have to pump it up. But people have been pumping water up for hundreds of years for their kitchens.
Yeah.
So you would think you could protect your water source and do it.
Well, yeah, in the petit ouvrage that we went to with the mannequins, the water tanks are underground.
Yeah. Okay. Why does this look completely different than anything else?
All of this is all repaired.
But how recent? Well, here's the red line.
Yeah, that's original.
That's original, but this looks like a World War II square tunnel. What's going on here? I'm confused.
We're on the... No. This was, don't forget, this casement was added after the fort was built. At the same time as they put the turrets on, they put the flanking casemates and built the tunnels which arrived at them.
It's interesting that there are all these domed tunnels, and then you have a square tunnel.
Quicker to build.
Yeah, because you can see the cement, the imprint for the boards. This was just laid and poured.
Yeah.
And here are your pigeons.
Not long before 1914. But these are the guy with the sights sits there. The firer sits here.
You mean the gunner?
Well, they're all gunners. I would be the desperado, the one who's going to be loading it quickest, and my mate will be giving me the pre-fused shells to fire at the distance we've determined, okay, where the shells will go off. And so what I do is I stand here, and I open the breech, I ram the first shell in, I slam the breech, my comrade there pulls the cord and the gun fires. I'm out of the way because it's going to recoil out to there and eject its empty case. As it's going forward under the spring recoil, I've already got the second shell in my hand and I ram that in. I don't do it slowly, I throw it in. And as soon as the gun is forward, I slam the breech shut and he pulls the cord. The gun recoils, ejects. It's going forward, I throw the third shell in, I slam it shut, he pulls the cord, the gun recoils. 20 times a minute.
20 times a minute.
We can work up to 20 times a minute.
And the guy who lays the gun, all he does is take. So there's a gun commander. And
yeah, he's
as well.
Next door. There's an observation post for the two cannons. Yeah.
Because they'll be firing corrections coming at some point, I would imagine.
Yeah, but don't forget, if you're firing shrapnel shells, you know there are Germans, 200 meters away. And you set them to explode at 180 meters, and you're just going to shower them with shrapnel.
Is this for the moat, or is this for?
No, this is to defend the interval between here and Douaumont.
Yeah, that's what. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
So there would have been explosive shrapnel. There's also even armor piercing. No armor piercing. There'd be no armor piercing in that, would there?
No, the French Navy had a few of these guns, so you'd have had armor piercing somewhere along the line. But and of course later they used them as anti-tank guns.
Yeah.
I mean, especially in the Western Desert, they knocked out a lot of tanks with these. The Free French at Verdun. But there are the axles where the wheels would go on. But you see, you could take these out of the casemates. All right. It's difficult, but you can get them out. And then you put the wheels back on and you use them as field guns. And that's what they did. They came and they stole them all from they reused them. Stole them.
I mean, you're not stealing from yourselves, so
no.
Theoretically.
Well, yeah, the field army is stealing from the fortress artillery.
See that? Well, one branch of the military is stealing from another. I've never heard such stuff.
And this is the original artillery grey underneath the flaking off paint. Yeah, but this gun, 20 rounds a minute, you've got to give it to them. That is something.
Yeah.
And you're firing shrapnel against troops in the open when it's the war of movement. And you had a battery of 4 of these guns, a field battery. They're putting out 80 shells a minute, and that is fast.
Yeah.
They've taken off the recoil mechanism, unfortunately, which is really annoying because it's only half a gun. I know because I built the 72nd scale model. It's got the whole thing. 1905.
1905.
Yeah. And she's number... Oh, she's a Navy gun. She's got an anchor, I think. I don't know whether that's a rust mark or an anchor. Number 647. Bloody hell. Yeah, that would make it, at that date, that would be... Oh, it's 6 foot. No, it isn't. Wait a minute, there are more, aren't there? Number 4,647. So by 1905, they'd already built over 4,600 of these. And they kept on building them. So they ended up with between 5,000 and 6,000. The Germans were building field guns at 77 and howitzers. The French had about 120 howitzers. 1914.
Now, this would be ammunition elevator that we done either. Or, well, it would have been done here.
Yeah, they'd carry it up by hand.
Really? No elevator? No elevator?
They're about this size.
Yeah, that's true.
There'd be a team of men running up and down the stairs with shells. But they used these right up until the 1960s.
That was a good gun.
Yeah, and it's the basis of the gun that went into the Sherman, the M3 and the M4. The Grant and the Sherman. Sorry, I'm in the way. This one is number. But this was built in 1908. What number have they got up to? I can't see the number. Oh, yes. 5,044 by 1908. 6 more years to make them. I like doing little things like that.
Yeah, I agree. And somewhere, someone who actually hears the number on TV really wants to know. But for some reason, he's been researching something and looking for a matching number to something, and it'll matter.
The breech mechanism is a beauty. It's the French model in 1897. They started off with a 57mm model, and they made some gun turrets, twin gun turrets with 57s. Manonville had got 57s, and also one of the forts around Toul. And then they went up to the 75. And what happens is this whole section revolves. When you pull this, the whole thing turns around, and so that the bottom blocks the basis of the base of the shell. You put it into the hole at the top, you turn it to, well, nearly 180 degrees, and you block the hole. It's so simple. All the parts had to be finished by hand, so ground in to fit. So when the American Army decided to make this their standard field gun, they took the plans and some samples back to America and started to try to build them. And were horrified to find out that the French had intended little men in workshops to grind all the parts together, and that was not going to suit the American mass production system. So they had to redesign it for modern manufacturing, and the French were very annoyed because they had said, this is a state secret how these things work, and you've taken it apart and found out what's inside it. That is very, very naughty. I intended them to make the damn things.
And just when you see a restored fort, or one that hasn't been blown up, and you see the moat, and you see the corners, and see how neat that is, see how destroyed this is. The whole ground has moved, and the front facade is destroyed. And it was so pretty once. Everything is just torn up, out of shape. And this was built with a lot of rebar in it. Was this strengthened later, or? There's a lot of rebar in this.
This is when they reinforced the fort, because they had the caponiers which stuck out. And then when they decided to replace the caponiers with firing embrasures, firing galleries set into the corners of the ditches, then yeah, that would have been later. So in fact, when you've got reinforced concrete here, yeah, this might have been after 1900. Because they didn't do it all at once.
No.
They had a series of forts, and they fixed the bigger, most important ones first, and then the smaller ones came much, much later. So this would have been the reinforced concrete period.
And it sort of makes sense, because when you look at it, you see the stone. Well, it's kind of hard to tell, but I mean, there's stone underneath, and then you pour a bunch of rebar on top of it, and then you pour a bunch of cement on that, on top of everything else, which is sort of what we're looking at.
Yes.
And then that was then dismantled to show the rebar.
But was this a German repair while they were in the fort for a few months? A few years?
A few years.
You know, did the Germans bring in reinforced concrete?
I mean,
I don't know.
They did. I mean,
Nobody tells us what the...
they certainly brought in enough cement to build something.
Oh look, that's the doorway, isn't it there?
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah.
There was a doorway, that's the hinge.
I almost think anybody who's interested in history wants to know specifically when it was built and how, and when it was reinforced and how. And
yeah, exactly. Command position for the two guns, which are next to us. And this is reinforced concrete. It's been added about 1900.
Yeah.
And they would have had a thin armoured doors. But basically you're protected by this big wall here from the German side, which is up there.
Yeah.
They're firing to the side. So these openings are not immediately exposed to direct shell fire. It's only shrapnel that can reach them, and putting thin armoured covers over them will suffice.
And they're pointing sideways to the other fort over here.
Yeah.
They're not pointing towards the enemy again.
No, because the only way you can point towards the enemy is with a turret that hides.
Yeah.
If they worked it all out, it's...
And it's very interesting because the Czechs did the same thing. These were shut up really, really well. I mean, these embrasures were really shot up almost at point blank. It's almost as if they shot at each other. There's a big hole, yeah.
Yes. What, apron, which went round the turret. Look at the size of that. And up there are still some parts with boats going through.
So wait a minute. This now up there where there
This
is
was
the,
up there.
this was up there where the observation dome is.
Well, we see where. Yeah, it's just where those guys are there now, and it was blown off there down here by the force of the dynamite in a closed space, multiplying the explosive force.
This is a good
It's cast steel.
40, 50 centimeters thick.
Yep, and it's been cracked like an eggshell.
Yeah.
Now, a shell hitting the outside wouldn't get through. There's no way. Come on, a 42 centimeter shell hitting that is going to explode and make a scratch or a dent, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not going to penetrate. And the whole turret was blown in the air and landed there. Now later, in 1917, when the French had recaptured it after the end of the battle, they built this firing position here. Look, they turned it into a look. That's like the that's a machine gun position, like the elephant's head.
Yeah, upstairs.
It's
Yeah.
one of those. It's one of the firing embrasures.
So did they did it land on its base? Somebody they
Landed
readjusted
like that,
it.
and then they dug a tunnel from underneath to make it in, to get into the turret, so they could fight from in there if they had to.
Yeah, because
As a
there's
shelter.
you need an enormous crane to get it back in place.
Yes. No, you'd have to take it to pieces, because these holes filled with lead are the way they bolted it together. They bolted the two halves together and they bolted the roof on. That look is, I think, Americans experimenting with charges. You find that on several of the Maginot and the
World War One.
Serre de Rivière terrace. No, after 1944.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Well, the Americans would obviously blow up a national monument. That would.
Well, no, they were preparing for the Siegfried Line, and they knew they had to get through the Maginot defences anyway that the Germans had had put into action again.
Yeah.
But this was quite a shock, because if this turret had been in action, the Germans wouldn't have got very near the fort, or they would have done, but with major casualties. You know, 40 rounds a minute coming out of this thing.
Yeah.
You take cover or you run. Well, I would. Yeah, I just noticed, because noted the glass there. That's a Hamart
Yeah.
firing slot visor.
So these were built in after the dome had blown up, after the French recaptured the fort.
Yeah, French recaptured it, brought in this.
Of course, because these are pointing towards German lines. And there's another one over here. There's another one right here.
I knew it was a machine gun post, but I've never actually clambered up to have a look at the firing slits. The armoured apron.
Somebody was commenting on one of my videos claiming that one of the turrets in the Fort Hackenberg
Yes.
was a German turret.
A German turret?
Am I? No.
Hackenberg?
They may look the same, and they do look the same, and they very much had a parallel development started by the Prussians, but I guarantee you the French did not put in a German fucking turret.
Nope, they had much better turrets.
So this is where it was filled in. Here. This is where the dome was.
May have been, or the dome may have been here alongside it. That is actually normally set behind the turret. It's slightly higher than the turret is supposed to control. So I have no idea on the original position. All I can see is that's the firing chamber that's down there. And this is all filled in.
Again, we're back to this being ground up.
Well, look, the cupola may have been, the firing position may have been there, right, higher up.
Yeah.
And the turret would have been here, but not so much concrete. A bit lower down. It's taken some hits, isn't it?
It has, from the back, I guess.
Yeah, that would be an American armoured car with a 37 for me. Panicking. Ah. You see what I mean? If we continued in the ditch, there's no way up. But that was an own goal by the French, that turret. Serious own goal. Because you see, if it hadn't gone off, they might just have... I told you, didn't I, about the problem with these, that the officer's head is too near to the dome, and a heavy shell hit on it would... One officer was killed by the concussion. Several others were wounded. That is actually split.
It has. There's a crack in this.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, but this is very, very small. You'd be right here.
Yeah.
Even just spalling from the cement, if there was ricochets coming up.
Oh, yeah.
This is not a really...
Which is why they had that little wooden platform that they could actually bring the officer back down if he was dead or...
But yeah, this has cracked. And something did hit it.
Yeah. And the visor on the left, look, has been hit by something. Oh, yes.
Both of them, yeah.
That was hit in the middle. Good hit there.
So speaking of, have you noticed there's a little dome sitting down here?
Ah, yeah, that is garage with the dummies.
Yeah.
There was one...
What's
rampart with a little armoured gate behind
what is it doing here? That's what I thought.
Someone was trying to take it away for scrap, probably. And might have
Yeah,
dropped it.
this could have been the position.
Yeah, this is the lookout position. And they still fought on inside, that's what gets me. You know, it's disarmed, it's blown up, and they fight for 1.5 days inside till they run out. They run out of water. Come on, that is bad.
Was this an embrasure, or this just been dug up by shells?
Uh,
I wouldn't see any reason why there would be a turret here.
No, there's no turret.
Or
It's a tunnel, isn't it, that's being opened up? I don't know.
well, it does look like there's
An opening. Ah, no, that would be a mystery. I have no idea what that is. It's not the casemate, the rear of the casemate de bord. Something here as well.
yeah, that's where the
Our feet.
exit was.
Oh yeah. Where we were.
Yeah.
And it said bétonné. And I showed you
Yeah.
the metal planks that they shut off the part of the end. They are connected to the tunnels, yes. Oh, sorry. What is it?
There's no observation port.
Ah,
That's when you stick a dome on top.
yeah, close, yeah.
That's very strange. Of course, the barbed wire grate would not be there. But if it wasn't there today, one day you'd probably show up and the gun would be missing. Magazines below, and apparently no visible means of observation.
Eventually, on the 2nd November 1916, after a heavy bombardment of the empty fort, it was recaptured by French infantry. They had bombed it with long-range 400mm railway guns. However, as the Germans had abandoned it long before, no actual fighting occurred. After its recapture, Fort Vaux was repaired and garrisoned. Several underground galleries were dug to reach far outside the fort, one of them being 1.5 kilometers long. The water reserves was quadrupled, and light was now provided with 2 electric generators. However, the war never came back to this fort.
I guess anti-communication falcon that was chasing the pigeons. Then you really have covered all the bases.
The forts of World War I were to some soldiers a nice shelter, and saved many lives during the Great War, but for the majority of the soldiers on both sides, it was life in the trenches. But these trenches may not exactly be what you might think they were. There was an extensive bunker construction undertaken, especially by the Germans, including frontline huge bunkers for hospitals, fortified frontline firing positions with cement, all trenches reminiscent of actual fortress ramparts, something most of you have not seen. So let's visit the front and see what it looked like from the German perspective, and then walk the 100 meters forward to the French trenches facing them.
Many French soldiers who are unknown. Strange, isn't it? They wouldn't have found their identity discs. And then everybody who has had somebody who fought here and disappeared. Look, disappeared, blown to bits by shells. The French got through to the 5th line of German trenches. These are the German trenches that they were capturing. A turn in the trench, and they've made a kind of a little bunker.
Yeah, that almost looks like the smallest caponnier I've ever seen.
Yes, it's a trench caponnier, and I've never seen another one. That is amazing. There's not much of it left, but
No, you can see, but you see it's stone. That's
yeah. The French side is to the right, and so the entrances to the concrete bunkers are the bunkers are on the right.
oh, I see them. Yeah,
Entrances, and there's a firing step.
I have to see if there's a hole in this thing. I have to see. Oh, wait, there's a hole under where we were standing. There's actually a little bunker here. And there's a little bit of cement sitting here. So this was built by the Germans.
Yes.
And but this was originally a French trench?
Well, they might have concreted the French trenches.
Yeah, there's a bit of concrete over here as well. And this is...
But there's no visible entrance, is there?
No, it's very, very porous.
Unless it's been buried.
I mean, it is 100-some years old. This is... You could literally pick pieces of it.
Yes.
I'll put it back in again where it belonged.
I've never seen a caponnier in a trench system before.
Wow, this is very brittle. It almost looks like a layer of stone.
Perhaps it's just they wanted to make it into a zigzag.
Possibly, yeah, but this thing is, there's a hole in here. Interesting.
And mysterious.
And mysterious. I love mysterious. So,
Now you can actually go into the bunkers down there.
I'm going to. So in 1914, the French were here.
Yep.
And then the Germans came and kicked them off. And then the French came back and kicked the Germans off.
Yep.
And then the Germans came back.
The most advanced men were surrounded. And they ran out of water.
The French.
Yeah.
And then the Germans took this. So there was both the German and French trenches on top of each other.
Yeah.
And then eventually the Germans held it until the Americans showed up.
Yes.
This was Pershing's first battle, or
yes.
And
well, the Marines, don't forget, held a German attack in 1917 by Belleau Wood. The American Marines firing their shotshots.
Yes, because the Americans had to be wholly supplied by the British and the French when they got here.
Yeah, well, the Americans supplied trucks and things like that. And
Horses.
They're still reasonably deep as well.
They really are. This is really impressive. So you have all running down towards here, and then continuing over here.
So you see the interlocking of all the trench systems.
Yeah.
You see it on the maps, and I suspect that is a shell hole. Can you see?
I thought about that. It does look.
Yeah, that's a shell hole.
Yeah.
Unless it's a dugout that they covered with tree trunks.
I mean, well, it does look like an inverted cone, so I'm gonna go with it. Yeah, it's almost perfectly round.
Yeah. So that's either a 42 centimeter, or it's the French railgun, the 400.
It wouldn't be the. Did the Germans fight here against the Americans?
Yeah, well, they knew the Americans were coming, so they put up a token resistance and then fled as fast as they could. They couldn't stand up. I mean, the garrison of the salient couldn't stand up against 1.5 million men with tanks and artillery and air cover. So they they legged it. So this is all very cozy, isn't it? These little bunkers.
They are. There's rebar in here. See, all the mosquitoes live on the rebar here.
Oh.
Yes.
You're going to have a party in there.
Yes, I just woke them up. It's brilliant.
Yeah, they'll say, well, no, we're the survivors. That all the rest of our family died with the spray, but we're the mutants who got through the screen. Yeah.
There's a little bit of cement here and there.
Yes. No, the incident I was going to mention is in the Battle of the Bulge, they said, we found the Americans are bringing over chocolate cakes. That means we have no chance of winning. But that was in 1918, the last German offensive. They were desperate for food and medical supplies, and when they overran the French and British lines, they found virtually everything they needed. And they were shocked to see that the Americans were shipping over chocolate cakes towards the end of World War I, and they said if they can leave the space on their shipping available for sending chocolate cakes, we don't stand a chance. The game's up.
Morally defeated by chocolate cake.
Chocolate cake, yeah.
My God.
They copied it for the Battle of the Bulge movie.
Well, chocolate cake is always welcome, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Gives you lots of energy.
Yes,
Could-
it's satisfaction.
What about wrong with the Kaiserschmarrn? This is what we see on top of the forts later. I remember this. It is. I know, because I recognize this. This is just like the same dugout they had at Feste de Damen, and they tested this concept at the Kummersdorf Proving Ground by building a little fort that had these, and then they shelled the living piss out of it to see how long it will last. Why is this a gate or is this a window? It's got to be a gate.
Oh, there to stop you getting in.
Get the shovel from the car. There's the thing. I love it.
And then you can put your elbows on the firing step up above the parapet. The Germans. So the Frenchies are all together.
How far apart are they?
Well,
Over by the tree.
Yeah, 100 feet away or something like that. The top of the Butte de Vauquois, they were like a tennis court.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, at Christmas 1914, yeah, and they played football. And the officers came along and said, if you do that again, we'll just shoot you out of hand. You must hate the enemy.
And
The
this,
ordinary guys didn't want to kill each other, they just want to get on and share their drinks, sit down and have a chat, share photos. Come on, yeah. And the politicians and the generals forced them to kill each other in large numbers. But then, of course, there wasn't very much face-to-face fighting. All right, they'd jump down in the trench at night to try to kill you, and you would grab anything, including your specially sharpened shovel that would take you.
Yeah.
You could decapitate someone. I think that was another machine gun post, you know?
yeah, this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, the one that got hit by something heavy. And this step is bigger than the other one. But this is like the outer defensive of some of the forts. You go to Wagner, you go to Mutzig, you go all those built after the Franco-Prussian War. You would have these on the outer perimeters. Yeah, I did a couple episodes from there.
Slightly smaller version. Well, on half the size. But they've got those snails. And today is Friday, that's right. Yeah, look, there's a lookout position.
Yeah.
And the guy would have his sniper shield, wouldn't he?
Yeah, there would be the lid or.
With the little visor that he could lift. The only problem with that is that my French Lebel is a model 1915 arm-piercing round. Goes through that at 400 yards. So he thinks he's safe. And the snipers would fire diagonally along the French line, about 300 yards. And so the French would come up at night and they would enclose a little light field
Roger, there's a tunnel. I want in. Get key. Fetch. There's a tunnel. Why can't I get in the tunnel? Just because it's collapsed and how deep is it, and I want to go in at least under the trenches. This one under the front line towards.
Yeah, well, it's a shelter.
This goes very deep. This goes way down. This is at a angle like this.
So it's very sharp angles.
Yeah, I mean.
But then there'll be steps down.
I'm sure they're still under the leaves somewhere.
Yeah, it's around the corner.
Oh yes. Oh.
You don't see that very often.
No, you don't. Oh yes. The steel plates are still in front of this, aren't they?
Yeah, to narrow the... Imagine how excited the kids get when they run through these trenches at full speed. It's very similar to the ouvrage de Fort Terre. It's the firing point, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's well protected at the back as well. With this wall.
There must have been a plate over here.
But it's
There would have been a plate over here.
very impressive. It's amazing how much of this is left, isn't it? In the forest. Yeah, French trench has been reconstructed. But that is cool, those little plates.
There would have been the steel cover. It's got the same shape.
And it's like an arrow slit, isn't it, in a chateau?
Yeah.
Because it is absolutely crap compared to the other one we've just seen.
Yeah, it's 100 meters from the German trench, and it looks like a row of shell holes. They really were not more than 100 meters from each other.
Right when they were using the bells and houses.
I mean, if it wasn't reinforced at all and shelled a bit, it's sort of hiding.
I suspect these are the French trenches from
Oh, wait a minute. Over here seems to be a straighter line. Oh, here we are. Yes, because here's the firing position facing the German trench.
And it would have been similar effect.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it is, sort of. I actually think it looks like a little dugout in here, or a little under. Ooh, there's an under. Ooh! Ooh. Oh, yes. What is in there?
What's left of it? Yeah, now that looks like...
It looks like the other end of the other one over there.
No, but that looks very French to me, the size of it, the squareness of it. Right?
Yes.
The German over there is rounded, probably with that corrugated sheeting. But the French would have had, like on the Butte de Vauquois, they had standard-sized pieces of wood to support the roof of their galleries.
Yeah.
And so that's the size of the ones at the Butte de Vauquois.
I usually don't mind going into strange places,
I know,
but
I wouldn't go into that with that.
no, that one that's held up by two pieces of wood that's over 100 years old, and made by little pebbles that are now slightly falling down. This might be where I draw the line.
Can you record that for us?
I did actually.
Right, okay.
I'm afraid I may have to. I mean that crack right there is sort of
Yeah, it's a bit of a giveaway.
leading on this piece of timber there.
If you
plus-
touch the piece of timber, I think it would all fall down.
That's kind of what I was thinking, and that's kind of what I need to hang on to in order to get my fat butt out of there. So, all right, we're just
But that
gonna.
looks like the angle and the size of a French gallery made by the engineers. And of course, what would they be doing? They'd be digging a tunnel under the German trench.
That's what it looks like, and it looks like the same thing on the German trench, because they look like a gallery digging this way as well.
By early 1917, the Germans were fully well aware that their 1916 tactics have been wrong, and their numbers of soldiers were now dwindling, that there was little prospect of a long-term victory. But, on one hand, they were fully determined to hold the ground they had taken, so they now began constructing bunkers and defenses in depth. The French, on the other hand, were intending on pushing forward to kick the Germans out, thus spent less time and focus on their trench systems in return. And the German medical system, with the hospital bunkers, were certainly just as well planned and laid out behind the lines as the fighting positions themselves. Now, during the war, history and survivability of a war was one thing, the survivability of disease quite another. The odds of both have generally improved with each new war, and the German medical service during World War I saw a streamlining of services. Seeing a man wounded and delivered to the field hospitals behind the line, in theory, could take under 30 minutes. At least, that was the distance the two litter bearers would travel from the front line to the nearest aid station for triage and immediate treatment, on paper anyway. So how did that look? Each army headquarters had its own Obergeneraldoktor. Each corps had 12 field hospitals with 3 bearer companies. These were later increased, with additional medical units and personnel embedded along with the fighting units. If wounded in the trenches, best case scenario, you would be picked up and carried back through one of the rear-facing trenches, initially to a Wagenhaltplatz, and there you would be put on a cart and transported directly to the nearest Truppenverbandplatz. Here, a solid bunker with rooms for some 30 wounded and with medical supplies for 5 days. Once treated or stabilized there, you would be brought further back to the rear, to the regimental medical hospital, which was usually set up in the nearest village, the area in a school building or church. Here you might remain for 5 days at the most. Each wounded man must have 2 diagnosis tallies attached to him, usually done by the regimental medical service. These tallies had 2 red perforated margins. These margins were to be torn off according to the condition of the wounded. If he was able to walk, the 2 margins were torn off. If he was fit to be transported, 1 margin was torn off, and if he was unfit for transport, The card was left intact.
Maybe an overhang platform over here.
The metal.
No, I think this is just the corrugated.
Okay.
This, well, no. They're actually pretty thick. It's not a rail.
It might be the military railway, which is smaller.
Okay,
The light railway.
But it looks like they were.
Normal gauge rail inside it.
It looks like they would have held something over these two windows.
Oh yeah, they're because if someone fires over the hospital, then
Yeah.
could get in.
There would have been a little overhang here that have then fallen down.
But it's very well made, isn't it?
It is. It's very well made. It's really. I wonder if we'll ever find any photos from there. So we're like 500 meters to the rear of the German trench, aren't we?
Yes.
So it's a German hospital. So that you can actually, there's actually a trench that leads all the way up to the main trench system to carry the wounded.
Yes, there would be. Yeah.
There would be. This one leads all the way back to the front, I would imagine.
Yes, the communications trench.
But of course, there's an inside. Ooh. Corrugated metal. Oh, this is quite big. Well, hospital, I guess not. Yeah, I mean, as for a hospital, I guess it's not.
It's a French railway sleeper. Railway sleepers holding it together.
Oh, but there's another. I mean, you look at some of the wood. Look at this wood. It looks almost like it's new. Nice. And this doesn't.
The top of the pillar holding up the roof.
Oh, that's
Disconcerting. Some scrapmans cut the reinforcing bars.
Well, at least those are still there. Maybe there was a crossbar. There was a cross beam. There was a cross beam like this, I'm assuming. So he wanted to cut this one out.
Oh yes. That's a proper girder, isn't it? No, it's railway. It's railway line.
So that extended over into the hole over there. Yeah. Well, that was a bright thing to do for a historical place. Yes, let's just cut out the support. I mean, just scrap metal people, they have just no honor or sense of history, do they?
No.
None.
No. And when they melt down bronze statues, that is unforgivable.
Yes.
But then they come from Romania, where their families eat on,
Actually, a lot of them are Dutch after the Cold War ended. This is more solid than I thought. Oh, I'm not surprised. Step on the side where the support is.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, step on that side.
Yeah.
But it seems to be quite good. It wobbles down in the hole there, but it's good.
Yeah, should be alright.
Yeah.
The two railway lines side by side.
Yeah. Oh, here's a bat. There's two bats. Hey, buddy.
Yeah.
Alright, one bat has gone away. Another bat has gone away.
Whoops, here he comes.
Alright, coming back?
Yeah,
Oh, he's a big bat too. Oh, look at him. Look at him. Hey, buddy. He's a big guy. He's bigger than some of the others I've seen. Alright.
Pretty well protected as well.
What are the roof on this thing? Yes, it's very nicely built.
Why does it go up in stages?
Are we running up a hill? Yeah. Maybe.
No, we made it up. Danger, do not enter.
The bats were friendly.
Yeah, the bats, large bats. Yes.
That's in there.
Yeah, we do.
Oh, perfect.
You got to post up like that, and then there's the space.
If you go to the left in the trench, you can see there's a hole that Tino will
Hole.
consider entering. He won't do it though.
So whereabouts?
You have to backtrack a little bit.
Well, the hospital should have a swimming pool. Was it German swimming pool?
Yes, it's well protected for a hospital. That's almost a couple of meters. You finding trenches over there?
Yeah, there's got to be trench.
And I want this.
Oh, there's a hole there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, well.
They're finding holes underground here.
Further back.
Ooh, that is a
Oh,
trench.
that's not the hole I'm talking about. There's a bigger one.
Oh, there's one over there.
Yeah, there's a big one back there.
Oh, there. Oh, right.
Aha. I see an artifact. Oh, this goes all the way, doesn't it?
Quite deep as well for an earth.
Woo! I really need a hobby. But this was a lot deeper. If these were entrance to shelters, this trench would have been a lot deeper. I mean, it must have been twice as deep. For the, at least it needs a bit of a clearance there.
I don't even use GPS.
I have a compass in the car as well.
Correct, wife, but
Ooh.
our ancestors must have flown out of the oceans at the time when the North and South poles were reversed. Whenever we came out of an underground train to get to the British Museum, she would turn left. I said, no, it's right. Every time she would always go the opposite direction. So she must have been
I see daylight down there.
a descendant of an amphibian. Southeast North.
Is that the reason why she's your ex now?
I see, do I see daylight?
No,
So-
you don't.
Are you sure?
That's nice.
That does not look like daylight.
That is very nice. In very good condition.
I know. I'm dying to go down there.
Only we had a ladder or a piece of rope.
I mean,
we
just
could
a
pull
rope
you
so I
up
could,
again.
yeah.
Yeah.
Tie you to the tree.
Well, I mean, there's a tree.
That's
That one
is
would
there
hold.
a tree somewhere?
That one would hold down there. That tree would hold. I'm just. God.
No, it's a troop shelter, isn't it?
There's one more up here.
Oh, I like this.
And the galvanized corrugated.
Yeah, this is not rusty at all.
Ah, that's brilliant.
One more, you said.
Look at the way it's held together by those little sort of staple things.
I guess the wooden staircase didn't hold up. Ooh.
You think there's a tunnel?
Must lead somewhere.
They must be connected. And there's a little hole there as well. Right there next to it.
Yeah, well, there's another one around the corner.
Ew. You know what Lenin said? Everything is connected to everything else. And there's even less of a staircase.
But I'm always puzzled why the Communist Party is still going in France. You can vote Communist.
Yeah.
And they're not like, they're not Stalinists, they're not fascists. But look at the little crosses to hold it all together on the sides.
I know.
Never seen that before.
Yeah, really, it's buckled in nicely
Yeah.
on the sides there.
Another T-shirt I wear is Makhno, the Ukrainian hero from 100 years ago.
Yeah.
But I have a T-shirt with Makhno on to support the Ukraine.
So you are t-shirts. Your statements are going through your t-shirts.
Yes, yes.
I mean, they had some time to construct this thing. This is fairly well done, fairly elaborate.
Yes.
Would they have done this overnight?
Oh, I don't know. No,
I mean, I guess you could hide things from aerial reconnaissance still.
with a net over it, yeah, or branches perhaps. But this is the same type of machine gun post with 1, 2, 3 little slots, firing slots.
Yep.
The same engineers built them. This one isn't as well preserved.
So I'm thinking this whole thing would have had a roof over it,
Yeah.
since there's a pillar in the middle to hold.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting. You really don't see that a lot.
No, that's why I thought you'd like it.
Yeah.
And you said the poor old French ship over there. How 50 feet. I suppose the stonework has survived because there's no village around here to pinch the stone. Oh, there are 2 sandbags in there filled with cement. And down the bottom of the hole.
Yeah, I thought that's.
Sandbags.
Yeah, they just brought. I guess they just brought in bags of cement and just put them in place. And here's a steel beam.
Yeah, that's the railway line.
Yeah.
They must know I've got lots of sugar in my blood.
That's all I got, so don't say that. So you think this is early war? Or when was this?
Oh, they done this for 1915, didn't they? Good. Consolidate their positions and then throw the French back. Oh. But those little machine gun positions, they're great. I've never seen those anywhere else.
No, they really are. Even a little metal hook maybe for the mount. Actually, I don't know. There's a little metal hook here, right here. Right here. Interesting.
So actually, they wouldn't be machine gun posts. Actually, they'd be rifle posts.
Rifle posts.
Because the standard MG08 came on the sled mount, didn't it?
Yes.
And it
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah, they were.
until they had the portable MG.
Oh, this just keeps going. So what am I doing, a left or a right here? I don't even know.
There's a little staircase to climb up.
I just love how elaborate this is. These are really cool. That's really not something you expect to see. World War One.
Such good condition.
Yeah. And this continues. So this is running away from the French line, isn't it? This is. Just in. And they're all cemented up, all concrete sides.
Well, I suspect that a lot of, I mean, you think they're loose stones, but that's the terrain, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a rocky terrain. They're all flat.
So, and over there,
That's the French.
right there.
And there's just concrete lines, like a shelf, if you like.
Yeah.
And they had armored steel covers which would fall down flat to guard your head against shrapnel, and then when an attack came in, you lifted them up on supports about that high, and they had firing slots in them.
The French trenches from before the war started.
Round Verdun, for example, around all the Place Fort, the strongholds, they had these pre-prepared concrete and steel trenches.
And they had the slabs on the side. They weren't built up with stones. They had slabs.
Yeah, they were molded in
Yeah.
concrete.
So this is sort of the trench, the French trench.
Yeah, little shells.
And you put little,
Nothing.
yeah, you put little bags in there that still won't do anything.
Exactly.
A couple of poles that are kind of holding up the
Come
wood.
on, a German 77 shell will go through that.
I'm not sure you would a hand grenade wouldn't.
Never mind a 15 centimeter. It's just they don't.
No, they are very. I think the word I'll be looking for will be flimsy.
Above ground.
They are. They're not dug down very deep at all.
No. So you're sitting ducks here. Jeez. The difference is scary.
I guess you can take a page out of a mock British doctrine and say, well, by making crappy trenches, that'll motivate the men to get out.
Yes, especially when they're waterlogged up to the knees.
Yes. It's like, let's attack because we don't want to stay here. We'd rather take the German trenches because they're more comfortable.
Yeah, some stupid general in a chateau thought that up.
Oh yes, yes. Oh, of course.
Don't forget that guy there when you and me go over the top. Captain Darling and I will be behind you. Yeah.
35 miles behind you, but yeah.
The advanced fighting positions of World War I continues to surprise me, and I'm looking very much forward to bringing you some of the most advanced underground installations and forts from this war as well. See you next time.
Behind me is Vanna von Braun's first test stand. Down the road is Dietmar's nuclear reactor. Over there is the Maginot Line and all its amazing forts. I'm visiting them all and I'm bringing them to you. So I really appreciate you like, follow, and share what I'm doing, trying to document all these important historical locations. And if you feel like you want to watch more pictures or documents that I use for these, go to lostbattlefields.com. And if you feel like helping me out with my travels, because gasoline and travel and airfare is expensive, my PayPal is there, protectionserviceint.com. You are more than welcome, but you don't have to. I appreciate all your support and all your help, and I love seeing these locations, and I love bringing them to you.